All right, let's get right into it. We're diving into some fascinating stuff today, folks. Some real drama brewing in the MAGA world. And we, at the Daily News Podcast, have got this scoop.
Drama's putting it mildly. We're talking about serious discontent, even among some of Trump's most ardent supporters. You know, they're raising some big questions about how this whole return to office thing is actually playing out.
Yeah, and the thing is, this isn't just your typical political squabble. It goes way deeper than that.
Yeah.
We're seeing a fundamental clash between expectations and reality here.
Absolutely, a clash of visions, if you will. On the one hand, you've got this expectation of a triumphant comeback, a return to power, and all that jazz. And then you've got the reality of what Trump's been up to since leaving office.
Exactly, and that's where things start to get really interesting, because you know who's leading the charge in this whole critique.
Go on, tell me.
Well, none other than Michael Flynn. The guy you'd think would be front and center cheering for Trump 2.0 is actually suggesting they ditched the whole inauguration celebration. Can you believe it?
Wow, that's a bold move. Got to give him that. But why? What's his reasoning?
He's basically saying the country's got some serious problems that need fixing right here, right now. Like border security, the economy, you know, the whole 9 yards. He thinks those things should be the priority, not throwing big parties and celebrating.
Yeah, I see his point. It's like there's a time for celebration, and then there's a time for rolling up your sleeves and getting to work. Flynn seems to be in the latter camp.
For sure. And he doesn't hold back when it comes to Trump's, well, let's just say leisure activities, those frequent golf outings, the fancy shindigs at Mar-a-Lago, all that.
Ah, yes, the optics of it all.
Right. Flynn sees it as a distraction, a sign that Trump's more focused on enjoying himself than tackling these big national issues.
And that's got a sting coming from someone like Flynn, right? I mean, this isn't some political rival trying to score points. This is a close ally raising some serious red flags.
Precisely. It gives his criticism a whole lot more weight. And guess what? He's not alone in this.
Oh, really? Who else is jumping on this bandwagon?
Kathy Barnette, another big Trump supporter, she's also been pretty vocal about her concerns, calling it, and I quote here, a nonstop poolside party. Ouch. Right. She's also pushing for a more, action-oriented approach.
Action-oriented. That's an interesting choice of words. I wonder what that translates to in the context of the MAGA movement. What would that actually look like?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Maybe it means shifting away from the fiery rhetoric and focusing more on actual policy proposals,
Right. Less talk, more action.
Exactly. Or maybe it means being willing to compromise a bit, finding common ground to actually get things done. Who knows? Maybe it even hints at wanting a different kind of leadership style, one that's less about personality and more about substance.
Now that you mention it, the MAGA movement has always been incredibly loyal to Trump, almost defined by it, wouldn't you say? It's all about his unique ability to shake things up, challenge the status quo.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating is that now, even within this hardcore base, there's a growing feeling that something needs to change if they actually want to accomplish anything.
It's like they're realizing that being disruptive is one thing, but actually governing, actually making lasting change, that requires a different approach altogether.
You hit the nail on the head. It's like they're at this crossroads, and the path they choose now will have huge consequences, not just for the movement, but for the whole political landscape.
Yeah, it's like a fork in the road, and they're trying to figure out which direction to take.
Exactly. So what do you think? Are they going to stay true to the Trumpian playbook, or will they try something new? What do you think?
Well, that's a question we'll try to unpack in this deep dive. We're going to take a close look at the different perspectives within the MAGA movement, analyze the potential consequences of this growing divide, and explore what it all means for the upcoming elections. Buckle up, folks, because this is going to be a wild ride.
Oh, I'm ready. And for all of you listening, remember, this is your deep dive too. We want to hear your thoughts, your reactions, all of it. Jump into the comments, share this with your friends. Let's get this conversation going.
Yeah, let's do it. The more perspectives, the better. After all, this isn't just some abstract political debate. This is about the future of our country, and we all have a stake in it.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
All right, so where do we begin?
Well, I think the best place to start is by taking a closer look at Michael Flynn's critique. What exactly is he calling for, and what does it mean for the future of the MAGA movement?
Let's dive in.
Okay, so Flynn's argument essentially boils down to this. The MAGA movement needs to shift its focus from personality to policy. He believes that Trump's post-presidency antics are distracting from the real issues facing the country.
Right, and he specifically calls out those golf outings and Mar-a-Lago gatherings as examples of this misplaced focus. He argues that these activities project an image of a leader who's more concerned with personal pleasure than with serving the people.
And it's not just about optics, you know. Flynn genuinely believes that the country is facing a number of urgent challenges that require immediate attention. He lists things like border security, economic revitalization, and restoring America's standing on the world stage.
Yeah, he paints a pretty stark picture of a nation in crisis, a nation that needs a leader who's willing to roll up their sleeves and get to work. And he seems to be implying that Trump isn't that leader, at least not right now.
It's a pretty damning indictment, especially coming from someone who's been so close to Trump. Remember, Flynn was one of his earliest and most vocal supporters, a key figure in the 2016 campaign.
Exactly, which is why his criticism carries so much weight. This isn't some disgruntled outsider sniping from the sidelines. This is an insider, a confidant, saying that the emperor has no clothes.
And it's not just Flynn, right? We also have Kathy Barnette voicing similar concerns. She's been pretty outspoken about her disapproval of the non-stop poolside party atmosphere, calling for a return to a more focused and results-oriented approach.
Right, and her criticism resonates with a lot of people, especially those who feel that the MAGA movement has become too obsessed with personality and spectacle and not enough with substance. They're looking for concrete solutions to real problems, not just empty slogans and rallies.
Exactly. And that's where this disconnect between Trump's actions and the expectations of his base becomes so glaringly apparent. People are starting to ask, is he really fighting for us? Or is he just enjoying the perks of his celebrity status?
And that's a question that's going to be increasingly difficult for Trump to ignore as we move closer to the next election. He can't just rely on his charisma and his ability to fire up a crowd anymore. He needs to show that he's serious about addressing the concerns of everyday Americans, the people who put him in office in the first place.
Absolutely. And if he doesn't, well, there's a real danger that those people might start looking for someone else to champion their cause. Someone who they believe is more in touch with their struggles. Someone who they believe is actually willing to fight for them.
So the stakes are high for Trump and the MAGA movement. They're facing a choice: adapt or die. They can either embrace this call for a more pragmatic and policy-focused approach, or they can risk alienating their base and losing their grip on power.
And we, the Daily News Podcast, will be here every step of the way to cover this unfolding drama. We'll be talking to experts, analyzing the data, and bringing you the insights you need to make sense of it all.
So stay tuned, folks. This is just the beginning. Yeah, they're really going to have to make some tough decisions and quickly. It's a pivotal moment for them, that's for sure. What strikes you as most interesting in all of this?
Well, I have to say, it's the sheer audacity of Flynn's critique that really gets me. You know, this isn't just some random talking head. This is a guy who's been in the thick of it, right, in Trump's inner circle.
Yeah, I get it. He's not some lightweight critic.
Exactly. So for him to come out so publicly and call for such a drastic change, it's got to mean something, right?
Yeah.
It really speaks volumes about the level of concern within the MAGA movement itself.
I agree. It's not just about disagreeing on policy details or something. It suggests a deeper worry, like maybe they're losing sight of what they set out to do, that maybe Trump's personal choices are actually hurting their cause.
And remember, we got to hear this firsthand from Kathy Barnette when we had her on the Daily News Podcast. Yeah. She didn't sugarcoat anything when she talked about this whole lavish lifestyle thing and how it's just not connecting with everyday Americans.
Yeah, her words really hit home for a lot of people, especially those who feel like the movement has become too focused on personalities and not enough on actual solutions. You know, like healthcare costs, the economy, that feeling that the American dream is slipping away.
Right, exactly. And that's where this whole disconnect between what Trump's doing and what his supporters expect really comes into play. Holding rallies and energizing the base is one thing, but actually delivering on promises, that's a whole other ballgame.
It makes you wonder, what does success even look like for the MAGA movement at this point, now that they're out of power? Is it just about regaining power for its own sake? Is it about pushing a specific set of policies no matter what? Or is there something bigger, something more fundamental they're after?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I'm not sure there's a single answer. I think it depends who you ask within the movement. Some might say it's about putting America first. on trade, foreign policy, all of that.
Right, that national pride aspect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Others might say it's about protecting traditional values, pushing back against what they see as a cultural shift that's eroding American society.
And then there are those who are driven by economic anxieties, They feel like the system is rigged against them, that the American dream is out of reach. They see Trump as someone who gets their struggles, who's willing to fight for them, even if it means breaking the rules.
It's a really complex mix of motivations and beliefs, and that's what makes the MAGA movement so fascinating to study, but also so hard to pin down. It's not some monolithic block with a single purpose. It's a bunch of individuals with different backgrounds and viewpoints, all united by this shared sense of frustration and a desire for change.
And it's within that diversity, that we see the potential for both strength and weakness. If they can harness this energy, this passion, and channel it into a clear, compelling vision, they could become a real force in American politics.
But on the other hand, if these internal divisions get out of control, if they can't find a way to bridge the gap between those die-hard loyalists and those who want a more practical approach,
then they risk imploding, basically.
Yeah.
Wasting all their energy on infighting and losing any chance of achieving their goals.
It's a high-stakes game they're playing, that's for sure. The decisions they make now will have consequences not just for the movement itself, but for the whole Republican Party, and you could argue, for the direction of American politics as a whole.
It's like a political thriller playing out in real time, isn't it? We've got these competing factions, shifting alliances, all this tension bubbling under the surface that could erupt at any moment.
Absolutely, and for all of us trying to make sense of it, it's crucial to pay attention to the nuances, listen to the different voices, and realize that the MAGA phenomenon is way more complex than the media often makes it out to be.
It reminds me of this time...
Oh, hold on. Before we get sidetracked with anecdotes, let me jump in here. It's like, we're not just talking about abstract ideas. We're talking about real people's lives, their hopes, their fears, their anxieties about the future. And that's what makes this situation so important to understand.
You're absolutely right. And that's what we're trying to do here in this deep dive, right? We're peeling back the layers, looking at what's driving this movement, and exploring what the consequences might be of the choices they make.
Exactly. It's a journey of discovery. And we want you, our listeners, to be part of it. We want to hear your thoughts, your questions, your insights as we navigate this wild and ever-changing political landscape.
Because ultimately, this isn't just about the MAGA movement. It's about the future of our country, the values we hold dear, the kind of society we want to build for ourselves and for future generations.
Yeah, it's like the whole country's holding its breath, waiting to see what happens next. You can really hear that urgency in Flynn's words, that frustration in Barnette's voice, and this sense of unease among everyday folks who feel like nobody's listening to them.
And that's what makes this whole thing so compelling. It's not just some political game, it's about real people, their hopes, their fears, their struggles. They're looking for someone to lead, to offer solutions, to actually fight for them.
It reminds me of something one Trump supporter told us. I think it was when we were at that rally for the Daily News podcast. He said, "We're tired of being ignored, tired of empty promises. We want action, not words." Really stuck with me.
Yeah, I can see why. That desire for real, tangible results, it seems to be a common thread across a lot of different groups, It's not just a left or right thing. It's this widespread feeling that the system is broken, that the people in charge are out of touch.
And that's where the MAGA movement really tapped into something, right? Love them or hate them, they've managed to grab the attention of millions of Americans who feel like their voices aren't being heard.
The question is, can they keep that momentum going? Can they turn that frustration into something more concrete, a political strategy that actually works? Or will they just get bogged down in infighting and lose sight of what they were trying to do in the first place?
It's the big unknown, isn't it? And I think a lot hinges on how they respond to these challenges from within, these calls for a more realistic and focused approach.
Right. If they can figure out a way to bridge that gap, between the hardcore loyalists and those who are saying, hey, maybe we need to adjust course a bit, they might actually be able to turn this energy into real change.
But if they keep going down this road of division and arguing amongst themselves, they risk pushing away potential allies and just wasting all that political capital they've built up.
And that's a gamble they can't afford to take if they want to stay relevant in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
Politics is a constantly shifting landscape, right? They're going to have to adapt and evolve if they want to keep up.
Like a game of chess, got to be thinking several moves ahead, anticipating what the other side's going to do, and be ready to change your strategy on the fly.
Exactly. So that's what we're going to be keeping an eye on, in the coming months and years. How will the MAGA movement respond to all this pressure? Will they stick to their guns or try something new?
And what about the Republicans as a whole? Will they embrace this MAGA energy or try to distance themselves from the more controversial aspects of it?
So many questions, and the answers are going to shape American politics for years to come. But one thing's for sure, we'll be here to help you make sense of it all, every step of the way.
We'll keep diving deep, exploring the complexities, and giving you the insights you need to navigate this crazy world.
So stay tuned, folks, because this story is far from over. It's just getting started.
And that's a wrap for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next time.